Hi, this is Neil O'Brien. This is Profit Tips Expanded, and in this video we're going to cover Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy. A great little book, one of my favorites. And the two key messages that Brian gets across in this book are prioritization and focus. And I've studied this area quite a lot, and to me they are two of the keys to you getting more done every day and every week. Prioritization is knowing your most important tasks and focusing on them first. And the importance of focus is not allowing distractions. And in today's world there's so many distractions. To me, the main ones, and I'm guilty of this myself at times, distracting from that prioritized task are things like email, phone calls, meetings, social media, browsing the net, those kind of things. So this is what this book talks about. And before we start off, I'm going to take an example of somebody I worked with. I'm going to change his name. John. He's a copywriter, and I'm going to talk about a typical day that John has, because he tracked it for me, and then we're going to put that into context when we're going through Brian's tips in the book. So John works from home. There he is having his coffee in the morning, and he starts off about 9 o'clock, and the first thing he does is checks his email, like most people. Spends about 40 minutes on that. He has a number of tasks to do. The most important one for John is actually updating his website, and he's been putting it off for a while, so that's on his list, and he has some smaller tasks as well. So John, like a lot of people, starts off with the smaller tasks and starts ticking them off. Gets up to about 10:30, it's coffee time. He has a coffee, takes a little break, browses some of his websites, resumes. He continues with some of the smaller tasks, and then he gets a phone call from a client about 12 o'clock, and he has to do something for a client. So obviously that's important, that gets done. Then it's up to lunchtime. He goes to lunch, comes back, has a job to do, which he thinks will take about 30 minutes. It takes 2 hours. Goes on like this. The next thing is 4 o'clock, 4:30, and he's saying, okay, look, I'll leave the website until tomorrow. And it goes on like that. Now, just analysing John's day, this is, I suppose, typical of, what a lot of people go through in a day, and typical day in their business and their job. So to me, the key learnings from that is that, first of all, there's no clear prioritization. John is tackling a small task and leaving the website. Lack of focus. He's being distracted by email, by phone calls, and so on, and also ticking off the small tasks. And I think it's something we all do, but it's the illusion of getting stuff done. And so that's John and his typical day, and I'm going to go through Brian Tracy, and I've picked out some of the key points from this book and key questions. And Brian Tracy is one of my favourite authors. I've been reading his stuff for years. The guy is brilliant, and the one thing I love about Brian Tracy are his questions. His questions are absolutely brilliant, and if you even apply some of this to your typical day or week, you will see benefits in productivity. I've applied a lot of this stuff myself. I'm not saying I do it all every day, but I certainly aim to do a lot of the stuff that Brian covers. So that's John's day, as I just went through, ticking off small jobs, being distracted, and so on. So this is one of the first key messages in the book, and it's the key to reaching high levels of performance and productivity is for you to develop the lifelong habit of tackling your major task first thing each morning. Now, the old saying about eating a frog is that if you eat a live frog first thing in the morning, it's the hardest thing you'll do all day. Now, that's not very appealing thought, but the frog is a great little image to have. And even when I'm running training courses and coaching clients and so on, we often use the frog, and people seem to like the term. So watch your frog becomes your most important task. So what Brian Tracy is saying here is that you need to know your most important task and do it first thing in the morning. And I know at times when I've embraced this and done it, it can make a big difference. I know people, for example, who wanted to write a book and they're putting it off for years, and what they did is they started getting up an hour earlier in the morning, and they wouldn't open their email or do anything else. They would spend that first hour writing their book. And one guy in particular actually got 2 books written in the space of about 6 months doing that. So it's a very effective thing. You can see what John was doing there in the example I gave earlier on. We're all guilty of it. We sit down with a list of things to do, and what do? We like to feel like we're achieving something, so we'll tackle the small jobs first. Now, that is absolutely the wrong thing to do. We need to tackle our most important job first. And it's the frogs and the tadpoles. Forget about the tadpoles. You want to focus on your frogs. So this is the first key message in Brian's book. The key to reaching high levels of performance and productivity is for you to develop the lifelong habit of tackling your major task first thing in the morning. I know a lot of people go in and read email. What I do in the morning is I limit myself to 10 minutes if I'm checking email, and that's it. Because otherwise, if I don't do that, you could spend half an hour going through replying to emails and so on. So that's the first key message in the book. And if you can embrace that and build it into your plan, then you will see a big difference in your business, because you're going to be getting your most important jobs done first. Okay, the next one here is your ability to choose between the important and the unimportant is the key to determining your success in life and in work. So what's important and what's unimportant? So we're talking about eating our frog and doing our most important job first. Okay, I think we can all get that. But what is that frog? Because if you have a list of 10 things, maybe it's not always clear which one is your frog. And there's ways you can use to determine it, and we're going to come to that in a moment. But if you think back to John again, choosing between the important and unimportant, he needed to update his website. And he had other smaller tasks to do as well. And there's email and phone calls and so on. Now, what did John choose to do that day, and how did he plan his day? He tackled the unimportant tasks first. And he left the website until last. And what happened is, between the distractions, doing something for his client, his job taking longer than it should have, he never got round to doing his website. And then he's on to the next day, and probably the same thing happened again. So he's tackling his tadpoles instead of his frogs. So we need to be able to know exactly what our most important tasks are and do them first thing in the morning. Now, the next one I think will help us in terms of, if you're struggling to say, well, what are my frogs? What's my most important task? This can help you. Long-term thinking improves short-term decision making. Now, I often get clients asking me things like, will I take on a staff member? Maybe sometimes they want to do a course. Will I invest in equipment? Do I move to bigger premises and so on? And there's two factors that I always encourage people to look at when they have decisions like that to make. Now, the first one is to have a vision for your business, and it's something you might hear about a lot. I have a very clear vision for my own business, where I want to go to, what I'm going to be doing, the size of the business and so on. I sense that a lot of people in business don't. Very, very important. And I'll tell you why. It's because when you have decisions like that to make, having a clear vision makes it so much easier. For example, just a short while back, a client was asking me about premises, because he's kind of outgrown his current premises. Would he move to a bigger premises? And I went back to his vision and said, well, what size do you want this business to get to? And we've gone through that previously. Now, he wants to grow his business to a much bigger size. So I said, well, can you do that in your current premises? No. Okay, do you need to move to bigger premises to achieve that vision? Yes, I do. So it makes that decision a lot easier. Now, obviously, you also have to look at the cash flow side of it, and I would always do a 12-month cash flow forecast, because if you're moving to a bigger premises, you have to make sure that you can pay the higher rent, maybe while you're waiting for the higher sales to kick in from getting the bigger premises. So one is vision, and two is the cash flow forecast. So long-term thinking improves short-term decision making. If you're struggling and trying to decide, well, what is my frog? What's my most important task? Try and think down the road and see, well, where do you want to get to? And that might help with your decision. For example, back to John, if he wanted to grow his sales and saw his website as a way of growing his sales, then obviously that is his frog, because developing his website is going to help the sales and grow the business. Okay, this is another great question from the book, is what one skill, if developed and did in an excellent fashion, would have the greatest positive impact on my career? So think about your business at the moment in terms of where you are, where you want to get to. Is there a skill that you need to develop that's holding you back? Now, this could be in marketing, it could be video, it could be social media, it could be finance, it could be something that you have to develop, because quite often something like that can actually hold back a business. I mean, the ones I see all the time are just maybe finance knowledge, not really understanding the numbers, meaning they don't have the information to make the right decisions to move the business forward, is a key one. And I suppose marketing often comes into it as well, because that's evolving the whole time in terms of social media, video, pay-per-click now is, I know a lot of people using pay-per-click ads, getting great results from them. So maybe there's a specific skill that you need to develop that's going to help drive your business forward. Now there's another couple of just points and again, like all the other PTE videos, you have a workbook and notes accompanying this, and I don't have them all covered in a slide, but I will just go through some of the other ones that Brian covers. I've got the top 11 tips from the book in your workbook, which is just above this video. So Brian also talks about classifying jobs as A, B's and C's. So if you have a list of jobs, why not classify them? So your frog should be an A, but then you'll have B's and C's as well. And he will say, don't be distracted by a tadpole while your frog is sitting there waiting to be eaten. And again, that's all back to prioritizing, doing the smaller job while the frog is sitting there. Like John doing his tadpole small task while his frog website is just sitting there waiting to be done. And just some other ones here, just going through the notes. Another one here, and this is by Goethe, and this is one of my favorite quotes, and I often think of this not just in business but in family situations in life. I often think of this one as well. There is never enough time to do everything, but there is always enough time to do the most important things. I think that's such a brilliant quote. We all have lists of things to do, and that list seems to be never ending, doesn't it? Because even as we tick stuff off, more stuff is added onto it. So if you think about it, there's probably not enough hours in the day to do everything that we'd like to do in our business. It's just not physically possible. And that's what he's saying with this quote. We don't have enough time to do everything, but we do have enough time to do the most important things. And the best way to do that is to make sure that we're prioritizing and doing them in our plan and putting them up the top of our plan, because we do have enough time to do the most important things. It's just that quite often we don't maybe prioritize them, and even when we do, maybe we get distracted too easily. Another one that Brian has in the book is about planning your day in advance, which I've had that habit through most of my working life. And in fact, just going up a bit from that, I would have, I suppose, I set kind of goals for the year in terms of sales targets and so on, things I want to do. Like at the moment I'm working on my book, other things like that. So I'd have goals for a month, and I'd have a plan for a week, and then for the day. So I think it's very important to plan your week to make sure that you're doing all the things you need to do, and then at the end of every day I'd plan the day ahead. And of course what we're saying here is put your frog up on top. Are you a morning person or an evening person? It's important to know that. Some people, I think I'm a morning person. I'd probably have higher energy levels in the morning than I would in the evening time. So it's that type of thing. It's knowing when you work best. Now there's another great quote which I think I heard it from different people, but the first person I heard it from is Brian Tracy. There was no point scrambling very efficiently up the ladder of success if it's leaning against the wrong wall. And this is, you can be very busy doing the wrong thing. And again, I think this is a great saying. It's saying it's not just about being efficient, it's about being effective. And I think a lot of time management, it aims to get a litre into a pint glass. It talks about being more efficient. It doesn't look at what you're doing and whether you should be doing it or not. So this is, again, back to the prioritization and doing the things that only you can do really, really well. And there's some more in your workbook. There's some great questions about things like, what is the most valuable use of my time right now? And to keep asking yourself as you go through the day, what can I do and only I do that needs to be done in the business every day and every week? Because I often see business owners doing like loading timber onto the back of a van when they're paying staff to do it. It's a low value task and they shouldn't be doing it. So you should be doing the tasks that only you can do. Now, and again, just learning to say no to meetings if emails come in, and not allowing yourself to be distracted by emails and phone calls and meetings and so on. It's just way too easy. So, just to summarize, know your most important task, do it first thing in the morning, and minimize distractions like emails and phone calls and meetings and so on. You have the workbook with these notes. If you've had any questions, maybe just drop me an email. If you want to work on this one-to-one with me, again, just drop me an email and I'll come back to you. So thanks very much for listening.